Dr. Strengoit here, back to talk about HHN31 house announcements. Are you eagerly anticipating the first house to be announced for Holiday Horror Nights this year? Do you know when to expect the house announcements to happen? Well, let's talk about it right now. I've seen a lot of talk online about people eagerly anticipating when will the first Halloween Horror Nights announcement happen for 2022. Well, to discuss that, let's get into some of the data I've been collecting about the announcements for Halloween Horror Nights since 2014. This chart displays here when the different houses are announced each year between 2014 and 2021, not counting 2020 because obviously that was a very abnormal year with the pandemic. So on this chart you can see when the first house is announced versus when the second house is announced, when the third house was announced, etc. So where do we fall on this graph as far as today's date? Well, today is Friday, May 6, 2022, which means we are within this green boxed area on this chart. Now, what does that mean as far as the first house announcement of the year? Well, typically we've had the first house announcement by now. For example, in 2021, we had the earliest first house announcement ever. Back in 2019, the first house was announced in late March. Similarly, the first house was announced in late March in 2017. 2018, at the beginning of April. 2016, first house was announced in mid-April. In fact, the only time in this chart that the first house was not announced by today's date, we have to go all the way back to 2014 and 2015 when the first house wasn't announced until the beginning of June. However, ever since then, the first house has already been announced by now. And in fact, the second house was already announced before now, back in 2019 and 2016 and 2018. And even the third house had already been announced by this point, back in 2019. So by pre-pandemic standards, we would expect the first house would have already been announced by now. What does that mean? That means the first house announcement should be happening very soon. But let's talk more generally about the house announcements. People are always eager to find out what's coming to Halloween Horror Nights, myself included. We can't wait for those house announcements to happen. That's why we get excited during the announcement season. Well, as I said, we're currently up to May 6th, 2022. This is typically the very slow period where the house announcements are very sporadic and pretty far spaced apart. And I would even say that continues all the way through up until July. Then once we're in July, the house announcements start to pick up. There's less time in between each announcement. And then in August, we have an avalanche of house announcements happening one after the other. So what does this mean? This means I know it's hard, but stay calm. HHN31 house announcements will be beginning very soon. What do you think will be the first house announced for HHN31? How excited are you? The HHN31 house announcement season is beginning. Let me know in the comments down below. And please don't forget to hit that subscribe button.